Alrighty, I'll say it. I might have bitten off a bit more than I can chew. But I reckon if Garage Shitty can replace the strut tower, then so can I. Now I've got a confession, boys. This isn't the first time we've been here. Now this whole predicament started when I realized the black 32 that I picked up to be my Minto Supremo street car had a munted strut tower. Oh. Now as you can imagine, I wasn't super stoked to find this on a car that I wanted to call my Minto Supremo street car. So I did the same thing any sane man would do, and I set out to try and fix it with paper mache, which actually worked really well to make a mold to cut out the piece of steel that I needed to fit perfectly in place to weld in place to patch the strut tower. Until I overcooked it. Moving on, this thing you just watched me check together is called a tram gauge. A specialized piece of timber with two adjustable pointy things on it designed to check the distance between 2 points on the car, especially when I can't get a tape measure in there. And it is the primary tool I'm going to be using to make sure that the strut tower goes back in where it's supposed to. And I guess now that leads us to this thing. To sum it up quickly, bloody bargain. Basically, it was cheap as chips because the previous owner stripped it to nothing and cut the rear end off for his mate's car, which obviously worked well for me because I was only going to pull it apart further and I could ensure that the strut tower actually came out properly. It also gave me the opportunity to check the point-to-point measurements and an engine bay that hadn't been tampered with. Question is, what do you check those measurements against? Well, one of these bad boys. This is an R32 point-to-point workshop manual. This is what would have been given to the body shops back in the day when they were working on 32s on more of a regular basis. And all it does is outline location points on the vehicle and tell you the distance between those location points. Seems simple enough, doesn't it? Except if you ask a body shop where you can get one, they will politely tell you to stick it. Lucky for us, GDR forums exists, baby. Anyway, what you're looking at here are a couple pieces that I had a local shop here in Canberra cut out for me on a plasma cutter. I had a shop do it because I wanted them to be bloody accurate and I wanted them to be bloody spot on, and they were, except my design was wrong. Essentially, I made them an oval to give them the largest possible surface area, but unfortunately, I did not check the orientation of the holes in comparison to the orientation of the oval, so they don't fit. So back in Illustrator, I jumped, added 2 dots to the design to use as a template to mark out where I needed the holes to be, marked those on the pieces, jumped on the drill press, went through 2 drill bits and a whole can of cutting lube trying to get through this stupid 25mm thick steel, and finally got it to fit. Now, in case you hadn't caught on from the intro just yet, the objective here is to create a strut tower brace-like jig that will hold the strut tower in the right location on the X, Y, and Z axes, as well as hold the strut tower with the correct roll, pitch, and yaw. Now, I'm not 100% sure if that's the correct terminology to use in this case, but it gets the point across, and I'm sure if there's a better way to say it, Dom will let me know in the comments down below. Now, if this car was at a body shop, the way they'd actually be fixing this is they would take the whole car and chuck it all up on a jig. But unfortunately, I don't have one of those. And I don't really feel like spending 15 grand to get one either, so this is gonna have to do. Anyhow, after a bunch of welding, this is what we ended up with. Oh, here they come. The qualified welders getting ready to tell me in my comment section that my welds are the wrong color. I don't give a fuck. And with that being said, it's time to get that strut tower out, boys. This is how we started removing the seam sealer, and that's how we finished it. Now, this whole process of removing the strut tower is a little bit tedious. Essentially, what you have to do is go along and unpick every single one of the factory spot welds. And the correct way to do that is to use one of these bad boys, a spot weld drill bit. And let me tell you, not the easiest tool to learn how to use. See how I kind of rotated just then, like I was pivoting around, trying to spin the drill bit? You're not supposed to do that, and that was unfortunately something I learned the hard way. Anyhow, eventually I got that off and it was time to move on to the strut tower itself. One thing I learned during the process of doing this work is that the level of quality of my work was going to be easily determinable by the level of patience I maintained throughout this process. For example, if I just wanted this whole thing done, I probably could have had it done 2 or 3 weeks earlier. But because I wanted to get it done nicely and done well, I really took my time. And this video unfortunately doesn't reflect that. It looks like it was quick as, but it fucking wasn't. Anyway, that's the first strut tower out. How good. One thing that I was forced to have to think about was how I was going to get this car out of my shed after I cut the strut tower out of it. Because I'm kind of making it a car that not only can't roll, but I can't get rolling, at least very easily. So in came the red strut tower. Now, unfortunately, because these things aren't getting cut up every other day anymore, these are pretty hard to find. So needless to say, I dropped the first that I could, despite the fact that I knew that they were missing the inside seam. And I didn't think this would be such a big deal, but unfortunately when they showed up, they were just a little too cooked for what I wanted in my black car. But perfect to chuck in a car that was kind of already scrap. Not to mention, it gave me a whole lot of practice with every aspect of what I needed to do, and then I was able to move on to doing this. Except the jig doesn't fit, or didn't fit technically. Yeah, so as it turns out, the white car had a slight impact on the right hand side, pushing everything approximately 5mm back, which meant I got to realign it with this car with how it's lined up, and now we have the accurate point-to-point measurements for this car. Now, prior to doing this, I checked all the points on this car, made sure that they're all dead accurate. Even though we've welded in there, my concern was that we might have warped that or moved it a little bit with all that heat and all that weld and all that ugliness. We might have affected the strut brace or the strut tower, but we haven't. So this jig is set up with the car straight, which means when we take that out, put the new one in and weld it in using this, it'll be good. And now I have another strut tower to remove, which I honestly just kind of went ham on. As long as I didn't hurt any of the surrounding pieces, the strut tower itself didn't matter to me, so I just got it out of there. The advantage to taking it out this way is I can essentially leave all the sills that we have here without having to spot weld them. Cutting that around the perimeter and then basically going around, carefully undoing the top, which is right there, and then undoing the bottom and then the sides. I can carefully and accurately leave this in as good a condition as I possibly can. Yeah, so basically what I was saying there is I hate spot weld drill bits and I didn't want to use one again, so I found a way to not. Anywho, what I'm doing here is test fitting the strut tower for the very first time. It's a little bit fiddly getting it in, but basically I just wanted to get it in there so that I know I can get it past this point and that point. Because that's the only point that I had to bend getting this out of the other car. And with the fitment now confirmed, really the only thing left to do is get in there and prep the mating surfaces of the two pieces of steel we're going to be welding together. Or spot weld together, same thing really. That stuff you just watched me put on is a rust converter. I put it on for, I guess, my own peace of mind. It's a pain in the ass to clean off. Don't recommend doing it if you don't have to, but this stuff is kind of non-negotiable. It's also really shit to work with. Alrighty, we have all the copper weld through primer on all the mating surfaces of the car, and done the same thing on the strut tower. I put it on both sides just to, I don't know, because it's what the fucking can says. Anyway, this is ready to go in. The can also says that if you've made it this far into the video, you should consider dropping a like and probably subscribing. Don't worry about that bell thing. I don't know when the next video is going to be up. I know there's going to be a next video. I just don't know when it's going to be up. But liking and subscribing, yeah, you should definitely do that. Got that bolted in down there. Got this there. Got that there. Bolted it all in. Clamped it all in. And then took this off very carefully with the clamps holding it in place. Did our point-to-point measurements, all 5, 6, 7 of them. And got everything to a point where it was perfect, and now it's finally in that position. We've put the brace back on so that it's held strongly in place, and now we're ready to put our first 2 tack welds. Fun fact, weld through primer is called weld through primer because you're supposed to be able to weld through it without it doing that shit. Weld through primer, I hate it. We're going to take it all apart. Check our point-to-point measurements. By this stage, there was about 4 corners that I had already welded up, so I was pretty confident that the strut tower was well and truly in place and wasn't going to move, otherwise I wouldn't have removed the brace. Yep. So that one's perfect. Yep, that's enough. Perfect. Final one is 876 millimeters, and it should be pretty well smack bang on that line there to that line there, and we're spot on. Did you hear that, mate? Not close, not good, bloody spot on. This was about the moment that I realized that all my hard work was starting to pay off. Not when doing this work, when editing this work. This is when it actually looked like I was achieving something. These short few clips that you're seeing here where it's like back and forth welding, grinding, welding, grinding, welding, grinding, that's a very small window into the actual amount of work that went into this. I wish that this however long video this is going to end up being even slightly showed how much work went into it, but unfortunately it just doesn't, probably because I stopped filming it. Well, I think that might have been the most painful process of anything I've ever done on any car. But it's in. Now I'll be the first to say it. Some of these welds are not so pretty, but they're bloody solid. And this thing is Australian slap, not going anywhere, certified, right? This thing is solid. As far as how it lined up, literally couldn't have gotten any better. Like, it's millimeter accurate, and these things have a 2 mil either way lenience, right? Like, you can have it 2 mil out and it's still within spec from factory. So the fact that this is dead on center, maybe it's too good. So considering what we started off with, I'm going to call this a red hot success, and I'll see you lot next time when we're throwing a motor in.